As I did last week with the Scholastic News questions, I'm going to be going over them individually as I did last week and helping you to respond to the questions a little bit more easily. So the first question is a little bit about the introduction of the story. I have taken the story out of presentation mode just so that we can see it a little bit easier because it was sideways in your presentation mode. So I don't know if you noticed, but the author tried to create a mood with the introduction of the story, and that is what your first question is about. So I think that the author tried to create a very exciting and maybe suspenseful and terrifying mood for this story with some of the words that the author used, talking about World War II raging across Europe, talking about Max feverishly cutting the barbed wire, and then also the words like terrifying moment. In question 2, it talks a little bit about the author using some figurative language in page 6. And you'll notice the figurative language is in this paragraph on page 6, and it talks about the word smoldered and the word inferno. And those two words are specifically related to fire. And so the author is using the figurative language of these words in this paragraph. Listen to what it says. For centuries, anti-Semitism, that is, prejudice against Jewish people, had smoldered in Poland and across Europe. Now, this prejudice means to have hatred and disgust and anger against a group of people, and that's what was happening in Poland and across Europe during this time against the Jewish people. So this word smoldered means that it had been growing. It's kind of like a fire still hasn't been put out. It's still there. It's not completely out. And then the author goes on to say, soon it would explode into an inferno of violence and death that nobody could have imagined. Well, an inferno, that is a raging fire. That is a fire that is out of control, and people will not be able to believe what will happen. In the next question, it asks about what life was like for Stefania in Presmia in 1938 and how her life had changed once the Nazis had taken over. Well, over here in chapter 6, it talks a lot about Stefania's life prior to the Nazis taking over. But then afterwards, in this paragraph here, there's a lot of discussion about what happened, and over here, what happens to her life and how it changes. So you can tell in the beginning of her life there, it was fun and exciting. She really enjoyed living there, especially meeting Max and his family and spending time with them. And then once the Nazis took over in Poland, everything changed, and Stefania was in constant worry for Max and his family. The next question specifically talks about this section here in Hitler's vicious lies, and it asks about what does it contribute to the article, and I'm sure that the author wanted to include this information in the article so that the reader would have a good understanding of what Hitler was trying to accomplish and what he was trying to establish with Germany and their control of all of Europe, and just eradicating the Jewish people and trying to get rid of them. It helps you develop and understand some background in what was actually happening during this time. The next question would like for you to summarize the excerpt of the story, The Light in the Hidden Places. This is an excerpt from the book based on Stafiana's life, and it discusses a little bit about something that she witnessed. I think it's important for you to read this excerpt and have a good understanding of what it was that she witnessed, but it wants you to summarize what the character was experiencing, and I think that the character experiences here an understanding of true evil, and that there really was no understanding what Hitler was doing and why he was doing it, and she really couldn't empathize with anything that was happening, and it wasn't any sort of mistake, and that she just was witnessing pure evil in this situation. The next 3 questions are the critical thinking questions. I'm going to leave those up to you to answer, but as you answer them, I want you to think about what motivated Stepiana to hide the 13 people that she hid in the attic, and I want you to think about the courage that it must have taken for her to do that act, and I also want you to be thinking about what type of things she had to go through and the different types of fears that she must have had to overcome and triumph over in order for her to accomplish these feats. So remember all of those things as you are answering these next 3 critical thinking questions.